Super important to get you your quarterback, tight end, defense rankings this week. One, because y'all got pissed when I skipped the video last week. Two, every quarterback's injured. And three, the tight end position is a complete wasteland and might as well throw defenses in because I'm streaming the position anyway. Tier 1 quarterback, there's nothing to discuss. You got Lamar and you got Allen. Pick your poison. Now, I'm starting Josh Allen myself, so I'm really hoping that Josh Allen's the QB1 in fantasy this week. But I think the matchup against the Detroit Lions has more shootout potential for the Baltimore Ravens than what we have with the Miami Dolphins, where the matchup with the Dolphins for the Buffalo Bills is the largest spread on the week. So the expectations in my mind will be that Buffalo just goes out there and they run the ball over and over again, or at least that's what we've seen this team do when they get the opportunity. Now, going over and looking at Jalen Hurts. Hurts has been very disappointing in fantasy. So far, he's the quarterback 14, and the big reason for this is we just haven't had the dropbacks. They just have been able to dominate games with defenses so far. I mean, you haven't had really any competition for this Eagles team. If we were looking at the higher lower for Jalen Hurts on Underdog Fantasy at the moment, they currently have him higher lower 27.5 pass attempts this week, which would be much higher than what we've seen through the first two. So possibly there's still some upside here that the Rams can play the Philadelphia Eagles closely the way that they were able to last season. And then all of a sudden we actually have the Eagles getting forced to throw the ball. Now, Justin Herbert will be our next QB. Herbert has been phenomenal. The Chargers are number 1 in the NFL with passing rate over expectation. Justin Herbert is the QB5 in fantasy points. And what's almost more exciting than any of this is Herbert is giving you a floor with his rushing ability. Justin Herbert's had back-to-back games with over 30 rushing yards. Now, with that in mind, you are in a spot in which we should expect this to regress just slightly. Underdog has his projected pick'em at the moment, higher, lower 20.5 rushing yards for this week, but the passing volume should be there regardless, even in a tough matchup against the Broncos. Now, moving down a tier, Jaden Daniels, we don't know if he's going to play or not yet. I'll say if Jaden Daniels does play, obviously is in your starting lineup. But if he does play as well, I do want to at least throw the caution out there that he'll probably run the ball a little bit less just so he doesn't have to take the hits. And then looking at Patrick Mahomes, Mahomes cannot effectively throw the ball with the receivers he currently has. You can't blame the dude. He currently has like a 80-year-old Travis Kelce, a washed-up Hollywood Brown, and Tyquan Thornton, who was cut from the Patriots, as his top weapons. But he's been able to come through, and he's the quarterback 4 so far this season in points. He scored 26 and 23 points because he's essentially operating as prime Cam Newton, where back-to-back weeks he's averaged 60 rushing yards a game, and at the same time, you're looking at a rushing touchdown both in week 1 and in week 2. This matchup against the New York Giants is a get-right spot for the Kansas City Chiefs. This is the best matchup they've had so far this year, and this is the best implied team total we've seen them, where sportsbooks are projecting them to score 25 points. Now, I know that Caleb Williams seems crazy high in these rankings. Caleb Williams is the QB 10 so far this season. It's very encouraging to see the rushing for Caleb. He's had 85 rushing yards and the rushing touchdown, but what I'm looking at is the Dallas Cowboys defense potentially being the worst defense in the league. Now, I'm not going to be able to sit here and give you intricate details of exactly why this Dallas Cowboys defense is horrendous. I'm an idiot, but I can go ahead and I can look at Russell Wilson with 450 passing yards last week, and I can look at sportsbooks currently putting the Chicago Bears with an implied team total of 26 points, which projects them to be the 3rd highest scoring offense in the league this week. So you combine that with the fact that Caleb is going to run the ball, and you could make an argument, and I know this sounds crazy, that Caleb Williams should actually be the QB3 in these rankings this week if you believe those sportsbook projections. Underdog currently has Caleb higher lower 238.5 passing yards, higher lower 27.5 rushing yards as well. But of course, if you want to say, Mason, Underdog has no idea what they're doing with these projections, I'm way smarter than them, I would say you're probably not, but you're more than welcome to go take the lower than 238.5 passing yards. You're more than welcome to go and take the lower than 27.5 rushing yards if you want. The link's in the description. The link's in the comment section. Underdog's available in almost every single state. And if you use code FLOCK, after you play your first $5, you're going to get $50 added to your account. And that is the number one way that you can support this channel. Now let's move over and let's go over to Tampa. Baker Mayfield's going to be very interesting against the Jets. Egbuka just showed up on the injury report, missing practice on a Wednesday. So if Egbuka is going to miss, I would assume that we actually need to move our expectations with Baker Mayfield just a bit lower. But it's been encouraging that Baker's also given you some rushing upside so far this year, which has been able to supplement his passing volume, which obviously is much further down this season so far than where it was a year ago. Now, if you wanted to say, Mason, the only thing that matters is what's happened over the past 2 weeks. If the only thing that matters is what's happened over the past 2 weeks, Daniel Jones would be ahead of Josh Allen, and he would be the QB2 in these rankings. Because Daniel Jones so far has had 3 rushing touchdowns on the season. He's had a passing touchdown in both games. He's averaging 25 points a game, and he's the QB2 in fantasy. Now, for me, I would be wanting to take a step backwards, and I'd be wanting to look at what we've seen with Daniel Jones through his entire NFL career, rather than what we've had just with the first 2 weeks of this season. So if I'm looking at DJ, obviously I want to give the man his flowers. He's been great. This situation is 10 times better than what it was back in New York. But still, you actually have Tyler Warren and Josh Downs on the injury report this week as well, which is going to be something to monitor. Drake May looks like a capable QB streamer. He is the QB7 so far this season. You actually had 31 rushing yards and the rushing touchdown this past week. And the hope is against the really every team you go into the future, there's always shootout potential because this New England Patriots defense is horrendous. Now, maybe if they get Christian Gonzalez in, then that is going to change things. But for the time being, the Pats project to be one of the worst defenses in the league. Now, looking at Bo Nix, this is going to be a quarterback that obviously has been up and down this year. Week 1, he was horrendous. He's had a total of 4 passing touchdowns to 3 interceptions so far this season. We got the bounce back in week 2. I am worried about this matchup against the Los Angeles Chargers, however. Now, you do have the Denver Broncos projecting score about 21.5 points, which is very similar to all the other quarterbacks that we have in this range. But again, the Chargers defense has been great this year. Looking at Kyler Murray, very similar rushing ceiling to what we have with like all the other quarterbacks right above him in this tier. And overall, this game against the San Francisco 49ers is going to be a tough one. You're having to go to San Fran. It's an in-divisional matchup, and it's not like the Niners defense is horrendous. Now, Dak Prescott, again, is going to be in a super high-scoring game environment. Now, why I'm going to have Dak Prescott and Jared Goff down here at the bottom end of this tier is why I think that their offenses project to actually score more points than every other quarterback in this outside of maybe Daniel Jones. And they maybe have more passing volume than any other quarterback in this range. Just the rushing ceiling is not going to be there for Dak, and it's not going to be there for Goff. So I am going to have to just put a slight discount on these names in comparison to what we would have with the other guys that will go out there and pick up 30, 40 rushing yards. Now, going over to the desperation plays, Jordan Love is going to be in a great offense. The Packers project score 25.5 points, but I think expectations are they're going to do this by running the ball, and I don't think you have any upside of a shootout going up against the Cleveland Browns. Now, Michael Penix against the Carolina Panthers is a whatever play. Again, this game has a very large spread. The expectations will be the Atlanta Falcons can run the ball over and over again. Sam Darnold against the New Orleans Saints, kind of a similar spot. You actually have great projections for the Seahawks offense this week, but I think the expectations would be that this team can run the ball against New Orleans. And then Trevor Lawrence, he's looked very bad. I don't love the matchup against Houston. And then going down a tier, you have Stroud, Stafford, Wentz, Geno, Browning, Tua, Young, which maybe those rankings matter if you're in Superflex. Now let's go over to tight end. Trey McBride, tight end 1. Trey McBride, super safe target volume, right? Where you're looking at a player that's actually led his team with total targets over Marvin Harrison Jr. by a decent little margin here. The issue is McBride hasn't scored a touchdown, and this is a continued trend of him just not being involved in the red zone like we had last year, but he's tight end 1 regardless. Brock Bowers will be our next guy. I mean, with Bowers, we really want to see what the practice reports are all week. It was very concerning for him to pretty much miss every single practice besides the one right before the game last week. And you would want to say that that's what limited him to about 8.8 fantasy points, but he still had 8 targets back-to-back games. Tyler Warren, also another player that we're going to have to monitor the injury with. And obviously, I'm going to be giving y'all updates in the live stream every single night. With these injured guys, it's tough for me to talk about them in these videos. But if you subscribe to the channel, you'll be able to see all the updates going into the future. And with Tyler Warren, we can say he is currently the tight end 4 in total fantasy points, but the tight end 1 in receiving yards. So clearly an elite name, and just the Brock Bowers from last season. Looking at Tucker Kraft, absolute phenomenal breakout what we had last week. You're going up against the Cleveland Browns, so you'd assume that this team doesn't have to go out there and throw the ball, but Tucker Kraft is the tight end 1 so far this season. Now, he's done this with an unsustainable touchdown rate with big plays. I'd expect it to come down to earth just slightly, but you throw in the fact that you have the Jaden Reed injury here as well, and all of a sudden you can say, well, there's not much wide receiver target competition for Kraft. Sam Laporta up and down. Laporta week 1 looked good enough for me to say, oh, we got the Sam Laporta bag from his rookie season. We got the Sam Laporta back from the end of year 2. And then a week 2 this season, the Detroit Lions put a zillion points on the board. We have Brock Wright scoring the touchdown for the tight ends in Detroit, and Sam Laporta giving you 3 receptions for 26 receiving yards. So I'd be concerned about Laporta, but you're almost equally concerned about every other one of these players. Travis Kelce looks garbage. Like, let's call a spade. But at the same time, somebody has to catch the ball in Kansas City. And I don't necessarily know if we can project everything to go through Tyquan Thornton. Like, if Kelce would have scored a touchdown this past week, he would be at the very top of fantasy points scored so far this year. Jake Ferguson should be in a really good game environment. Again, right now you actually do have this Bears and Cowboys game projecting to be one of the highest scoring of the week. And Jake Ferguson at the same time has had 18 targets so far this season. Now, Kyle Pitts will be our next name. With Kyle Pitts, I was concerned with Darnell Mooney coming back into the offense, but Pitts still managed to have 5 targets, 4 receptions, 37 receiving yards, and he's the tight end 11 so far this year. Juwan Johnson's been great. Obviously, you had the highlight grab with him scoring a touchdown there on the sideline. I mean, he's had 20 targets so far through the first 2 weeks, and he's the tight end 2 in total fantasy points. Now, with that being said, he does project to be in the second worst offense in the league this week, so I'd expect that we get some regression here. Zach Ertz, I think you have to just play him regardless of if you have Jaden Daniels or not, but he's the tight end 3. I think similar to Juwan, you probably have some regression. Dallas Goedert's at practice. Sounds like Dallas Goedert is actually going to be playing. I regret dropping Dallas Goedert in the Flock League. Clearly you can tell I'm ranking him over TJ Hawkinson right now, but sadly, Thomas, who's editing this video right now, beat me to going to the waiver wire and picking up Dallas Goedert. Now, Kincaid will be our next name. With Kincaid, projects to be the highest scoring offense in the league this week. Obviously, week 1, you had the receiving touchdown. He's averaging 5 receptions a game. So it is a fine spot for Dalton Kincaid, but not something that we're that excited about. Harold Fannin, David Njoku. With Harold Fannin, he's kind of playing slot wide receiver here. I mean, if I were just going through and ranking these tight ends in the future, give me the young, exciting rookie. The problem with both these players this week is you project to be in the worst offense in the league going up against the Green Bay Packers. I have TJ Hawkinson here as well. Now, maybe Hawkinson belongs to slide down as much as what we have with like Mark Andrews. Because TJ Hawkinson this past week gives you a 2.2 fantasy points. I shouldn't say he gives you that. He gave me that in my starting lineup after he only gave me 4.5 points in week 1. So TJ Hawkinson has had 27 receiving yards this season. I am just delusional enough to think maybe the quarterback change is what we need. Maybe a great matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals is what gets us there. I am putting TJ Hawkinson into my starting lineup this week. Not feeling great about it. I'm going to be honest with you. But if we get another game where he has 1 reception for 12 receiving yards, TJ Hawkinson will be getting cut. I'm going to say that right now. Going down to our next tier, Hunter Henry. You would have thought that Hunter Henry had a great week last week, just given the fact that Drake May did, and there's not really a wide receiver standing out at this point. But with Henry, falls back down to earth dramatically. He's the tight end 21 so far this year now, where you only had 3 targets for 1 reception and 9 receiving yards. Jonnu Smith, this is a really good matchup going up against the New England Patriots, but Arthur Smith is just allowing every single player in this Pittsburgh Steelers offense to touch a ball. The targets are so spread out. Britton Strange will be our next name. With Britton Strange, he's been whatever. This matchup is whatever. Chiggs, whatever. Sanders, whatever. Andrews is somebody that you probably drafted and I'm done with. Like, rest in peace, Mark Andrews. You're over. For the Baltimore Ravens to come through and go nuclear in the first 2 weeks, and Mark Andrews to have 7 receiving yards on the season with 2 receptions, he's toast. It'd be different if it was similar to the TJ Hawkinson situation where I could go, oh, maybe it's just the quarterback play has been horrendous. No, the quarterback play has been elite. He's had no Andrews and he's horrible. Evan Ingram doesn't look great here either. Not going to sit here and make excuses for him. Maybe it's the injury. I don't exactly know, but the dude just played 43% of the snaps this past week, and he just missed practice as well with the back issue. And then we have Dalton Schultz and Loveland. Do not start any tight end here outside of the names inside the top 15. And honestly, you can maybe even, I don't even know if we can include TJ Hawkinson as startable players. I have to do it just because tight end's disgusting. Going over to the defenses this week. Tier 1, Green Bay is by far and away the best. You arguably have the best defense in the NFL going up against the worst offense in the NFL. There's nothing better than that. The Browns project to only score 17 points this week. The defense that I have to play against, I have to go up against the Buffalo Bills DST on Thursday night. And I'm terrified because this game is the largest spread of any game in the league. We've seen Tua just completely collapse before. So I am very, very nervous, and the Dolphins only project to score 19 points. I'm looking at the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks, good defense in real life, and at the same time, you go up against one of the worst offenses in the league. I understand Spencer Rattler's been okay, but right now, massive spread on this game, and the New Orleans Saints project to be the second lowest scoring offense in the league this week, only ahead of the Browns. Now, going over, looking at our next one, we're going to have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I don't know if this is a great defense, but they were able to get to CJ Stroud this past week, and now they're going to be going up against Tyrod Taylor and the New York Jets this week. Looking at the Atlanta Falcons, I mean, we are used to saying that the Falcons have a garbage defense, but obviously they made plays in the offseason. They looked really good this past week. They're going up against the Carolina Panthers. Bryce Young's bad, and the Panthers have a couple offensive line injuries, and sportsbooks are saying the Panthers only project to score 19 points. The Kansas City Chiefs, much better defense. Going up against the Giants, Russell Wilson looked great this past week at times. Honestly, you could maybe make an argument to put the Chiefs ahead of the Falcons. And the Vikings here, good defense, and at the same time, really good matchup that you have going up against a backup quarterback. The only hesitation is you do have to play against some of the best wide receivers in the league. Then we have the Indianapolis Colts against the rookie Cam Ward. We have the Commanders against Geno Smith, who just had a meltdown on Monday night. We have the Eagles going up against the Rams. Typically, the Eagles DST is going to be much higher than this. However, it's just a really tough matchup against Los Angeles. Then we have the Jacksonville Jaguars against Stroud with the bad offensive line. We have the Chargers, which have a great defense. Tough matchup, though, against Denver. Then we have the Niners, Steelers, Texans, and Cardinals. But hopefully you are aggressive with the waiver wire, and hopefully you have one of the top 3 defenses. And if not, hopefully you have somebody in tier 2. But I really appreciate you. Obviously, I'll be live streaming every single night, updating you with rankings. The updated rankings will also be on flogfantasy.com. All I ask is make sure that you are subscribed. It looks like we have a real shot at 300,000 subscribers, which would be awesome if we could actually do that. And if you wanted to support this channel, the number one way that you could do it is taking advantage of the offer on Underdog Fantasy, or if you wanted to go and check out any of those pick'ems, after you play your first $5 on Underdog Fantasy with code FLOCK, you're going to get $50 added to your account. Underdog Fantasy is available in almost every state, and that link is both in the description and the comment section. But that's all I got for you. I really appreciate you, and I really hope we get to see you out with the live stream later tonight.